They're trying to convince you that fascism is actually a left-wing project. In his PragerU video, Dinesh D'Souza proudly announces that the left is the real fascism, and that historians have secretly erased the true philosopher of fascism to hide it. To get there, he turns a messy history of the word fascist into a clean victim story about conservatives, waves away a century of scholarship as a left-wing conspiracy, and then cherry-picks one Italian thinker to redefine the entire ideology. From there, it's guilt by slogan. If a Democrat ever said, "We're all in this together," well, they might as well be quoting Gentile, so welcome to fascism, I guess. Along the way, you'll spot the hits: cherry-picking, false dichotomies, and a big dose of, if the refs are biased, the facts don't matter. Welcome to Media Breakfast, where we take propaganda apart before it ruins your appetite.
He's a fascist. For decades, this has been a favorite smear of the left aimed at those on the right. Every Republican president, for that matter, virtually every Republican, since the 1970s has been called a fascist, now more than ever. This label is based on the idea that fascism is a phenomenon of the political right. The left says it is, and some self-styled white supremacists and neo-Nazis embrace the label. But are they correct?
Dinesh opens by claiming fascist is just the left's favorite playground insult for anyone to the right of Jimmy Carter, and that this all rests on a big mistaken idea, that fascism is something on the right. He tees up a victim story where conservatives are the real targets of an overused smear. Notice how fast he flattens everything. Instead of asking, what do historians mean by fascism, he jumps to, the left calls every Republican a fascist. That's narrative simplification. Turn a messy mix of protest signs, hot takes, and real scholarship into one clean persecution arc. There's no evidence that virtually every Republican has been widely branded a fascist. The term shows up, sure, but not as some universal official label. And academically, fascism is pretty specific: one-party rule, ultranationalism, violent suppression of dissent, not any conservative you dislike. Turning that into a generic insult is like calling every bad meal Hitler's diner. Dramatic and useless if you're just trying to eat. All right, let's see how he plans to fix fascism's definition for us.
To answer this question, we have to ask what fascism really means. What is its underlying ideology? Where does it even come from? These are not easy questions to answer. We know the name of the philosopher of capitalism, Adam Smith. We know the name of the philosopher of Marxism, Karl Marx. But who's the philosopher of fascism? Yes, exactly. You don't know. Don't feel bad. Almost no one knows.
So who's the philosopher of fascism? You don't know, therefore, mystery. This is a neat trick. Invent a rule, then act shocked when reality doesn't follow it. Political ideologies don't all come with one designated philosopher like a Pokemon card. Fascism, in particular, is treated by scholars as a movement and a cluster of regimes. Mussolini, Hitler, Sorel, Gentile, a lot of nationalist and militarist currents. No single Mr. Fascism everyone cites the way socialists cite Marx. By pretending there must be, he manufactures a mystery only he can solve. That's manufactured narrative. He builds a puzzle to look like the guy holding the missing piece. It's like asking, who invented music, and acting profound when nobody answers, my cousin Tony. Roll it forward. Time for the big reveal of our supposedly vanished thinker.
This is not because he doesn't exist, but because historians, most of whom are on the political left, had to erase him from history in order to avoid confronting fascism's actual beliefs. So let me introduce him to you. His name is Giovanni Gentile. Born in 1875, he was one of the world's most influential philosophers in the first half of the 20th century.
This jumps from, you probably haven't heard of this guy, to, he was erased by the left in about 3 seconds. That's conspiracy-style manufactured narrative. In reality, Gentile is in Wikipedia, Britannica, and standard histories of Italian fascism. He's discussed by left, right, and apolitical scholars because he mattered to Italian fascism. He's obscure to the general public the same way most 20th century philosophers are obscure. No Marvel cameo, dense prose, zero TikToks. Calling that erasure primes you to see ordinary academic priorities as a cover-up. It's like claiming librarians buried the dictionary because you had to Google a word. Okay, so now that our forbidden philosopher is on stage, let's hear what Dinesh says he believed.
Gentile believed that there were two diametrically opposed types of democracy. One is liberal democracy, such as that of the United States, which Gentile dismisses as individualistic, too centered on liberty and personal rights, and therefore selfish. The other, the one Gentile recommends, is true democracy, in which individuals willingly subordinate themselves to the state. Like his philosophical mentor Karl Marx, Gentile wanted to create a community that resembles the family, a community where we are all in this together.
He's taking a very weird, very technical Italian idealist and flattening him into Marx plus family vibes. That's narrative simplification with a side of name-dropping. Gentile did attack liberal individualism and argue the individual is realized through the state. That part's fair. But calling Marx his philosophical mentor glosses over that Gentile was shaped much more by Hegel, and he explicitly rejected Marx's materialism. The family metaphor is there, but it's in service of an authoritarian, fused state society, not just let's all be nice. Compressing all that to Marx but cuddlier primes you to hear fascism and think, just socialism with extra steps. It's explaining squid lasagna by saying, yeah, basically pizza. Let's see how he uses that setup once he starts quoting Democrats.
It's easy to see the attraction of this idea. Indeed, it remains a common rhetorical theme of the left. For example, at the 1984 convention of the Democratic Party, the governor of New York, Mario Cuomo, likened America to an extended family, where, through the government, people all take care of each other. Nothing's changed. 30 years later, a slogan of the 2012 Democratic Party convention was, "The government is the only thing we all belong to." They might as well have been quoting Gentile.
This is classic cherry-picking dressed up as guilt by association. He yanks two lines from two very different contexts, decades apart, and lines them up next to Gentile to imply ideological plagiarism. Yes, Cuomo used an extended family metaphor. Yes, a 2012 DNC video said, "We all belong to the government," in the sense of shared public institutions. Neither speech was a call for dissolving individual rights into a one-party state. Equating welfare rhetoric or civic belonging with fascist totalization deletes context on purpose. When you only hear the soundbite, your brain plugs in the scariest meaning he's suggested. It's like hearing, "We're all in this together" at a school assembly and assuming the principal is founding a cult. All right, from slogans we move to labels. Time for him to talk about National Socialists.
Now remember, Gentile was a man of the left. He was a committed socialist. For Gentile, fascism is a form of socialism, indeed, its most workable form. While the socialism of Marx mobilizes people on the basis of class, fascism mobilizes people by appealing to their national identity as well as their class. Fascists are socialists with a national identity. German fascists in the 1930s were called Nazis, basically a contraction of the term National Socialist.
Here he's running a label-based shell game. Gentile did see fascism as anti-liberal and anti-capitalist, and he used social language. But in power, fascist regimes treated actual socialists and communists as enemies, to be jailed, beaten, or killed. Historians describe Nazism and Italian fascism as far-right, ultranationalist, violently anti-left movements. The Nazi Party's full name includes socialist, and then they smashed unions and outlawed socialist parties. That's narrative simplification plus label confusion. Stare hard at the word socialist on the bottle. Ignore what's inside. By that logic, IKEA and the Islamic State are basically the same because they start with I and cause suffering. Let's see how he translates Gentile's dense philosophy into something more cinematic.
For Gentile, all private action should be oriented to serve society. There's no distinction between the private interest and the public interest. Correctly understood, the two are identical. And who is the administrative arm of society? It's none other than the state. Consequently, to submit to society is to submit to the state, not just in economic matters, but in all matters. Since everything is political, the state gets to tell everyone how to think and what to do.
There's a mix of accuracy and dramatization here. Gentile really did argue that individuals and the state are fused, and that the true self is realized through the collective political life. No liberal privacy bubble in that picture. But Dinesh's final line, "the state gets to tell everyone how to think," is his hostile paraphrase, not Gentile's wording. That's loaded language layered onto real authoritarian implications. It collapses a convoluted idealist argument into a horror movie tagline, so you feel revulsion without ever seeing how the philosophy is built. Everything is political becomes the thought police are here. It's like slapping "nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, this summer, the state" on a 400-page phenomenology text. Okay, so theory becomes practice. Time for Mussolini to enter the chat.
It was another Italian, Benito Mussolini, the fascist dictator of Italy from 1922 to 1943, who turned Gentile's words into action. In his Dottrina del Fascismo, one of the doctrinal statements of early fascism, Mussolini wrote, "All is in the state, and nothing human exists or has value outside the state." He was merely paraphrasing Gentile.
The history is partly right, partly airbrushed. Mussolini did rule Italy from 1922 to 1943, and that "all is in the state" line is real. Gentile co-authored that essay and clearly influenced fascist doctrine. But calling Mussolini's text merely paraphrasing Gentile is more story than scholarship. Fascism was an ideological stew. Gentile, sure, plus Mussolini's own politics, plus nationalist, militarist, and syndicalist strains. Dinesh collapses that messy mix into a single pipeline. Gentile writes, Mussolini obeys. That narrative simplification keeps things tidy for his next leap. If Gentile equals fascism, and Gentile equals the left, then you see where he wants to go. Let's watch him make that jump from 1930s Italy to modern American policy.
The Italian philosopher is now lost in obscurity. But his philosophy could not be more relevant because it closely parallels that of the modern left. Gentile's work speaks directly to progressives who champion the centralized state. Here in America, the left has vastly expanded state control over the private sector, from healthcare to banking, from education to energy. This state-directed capitalism is precisely what German and Italian fascists implemented in the 1930s.
This is where regulation quietly morphs into reboot of fascism. Yes, Gentile is obscure to non-nerds, but not to historians. And yes, modern governments regulate big sectors, but equating mixed economy oversight in a democracy with fascist state-directed capitalism is a catastrophic collapse move, plus hasty generalization. In the 1930s, fascist states suppressed opposition, rigged or abolished elections, crushed unions, and used violence as routine governance. Today in the US, you still have competitive elections, independent courts, private ownership, and companies that sue the government, and win. Calling that precisely what Mussolini did is like saying putting a speed limit on your street is precisely what Stalin did. He's almost done. Now he just has to turn this into a morality play about left versus right.
Leftists can't acknowledge their man Gentile because that would undermine their attempt to bind conservatism to fascism. Conservatism wants small government so that individual liberty can flourish. The left, like Gentile, wants the opposite, to place the resources of the individual and industry in the service of a centralized state. To acknowledge Gentile is to acknowledge that fascism bears a deep kinship to the ideology of today's left.
This is us versus them purity framing built on a manufactured storyline. First, plenty of left-leaning and non-left scholars write about Gentile openly. There's no evidence of some coordinated refusal. Second, conservatives want small government, the left wants big government, is bumper sticker political science. In practice, both sides grow and shrink different parts of the state. Military here, welfare there, surveillance over here. And mainstream left parties and democracies are not campaigning on one-party rule and total subordination to the state. Painting conservatism as pure liberty and the left as fascism's secret heir feels great if you're on his team, and it keeps you from asking hard questions about authoritarian streaks on your own side. It's like saying, my diet is flawless, your salad is fascist, while you're double-fisting cheeseburgers. Let's hear his big, spooky closing warning about what happens if we forget Gentile.
So they will keep Gentile where they've got him, dead, buried, and forgotten. But we should remember, or the ghost of fascism will continue to haunt us.
He raps with a flourish. They will keep Gentile dead, buried, and forgotten. But we must remember him, or the ghost of fascism will keep haunting us. Then he signs off for PragerU, leaving viewers with a chill and a clear villain. This is emotional hijacking through Halloween aesthetics. The they here is never quite defined. Historians, the left, academia, but supposedly they've entombed Gentile. Again, in actual scholarship, he's very much above ground. The only people who've forgotten him are the general public, who have also forgotten 99% of early 20th century philosophers. The ghost of fascism line works as mood music. It makes his whole argument feel like a brave exorcism instead of a series of shaky analogies and cherry picks. Fear and suspense are sticky. You remember the haunting long after you've forgotten how thin the evidence was. It's like ending a weather report with, sunny tomorrow, or is it? And then cutting to thunder. And that's the PragerU version of fascism in a nutshell. Tape off. If anyone needs me, I'll be drowning in antacids trying to metabolize all that bullshit.